Hello, HalfPint here, and I just wanted to say real quick, if you've been enjoying my content, please remember to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and follow me on Twitch so you can always catch us when we're live and see more content. Also, if you are new here, welcome in, and if you're enjoying the video, please remember to like it because it helps me out a lot. I also post funny clips and other things on TikTok. All the links are in the description below, and thanks again. Now let's get into the video. And this video, this is about here in Kansas City, how the police ignored warnings of a serial killer targeting black women until an actual victim escaped. Tragically, after being sexually violated and assaulted over and over again and beaten and tortured for a month, and her friends, a few of her friends had already been murdered by the individual. People were speaking up in the community trying to report the missing women. The police department's response was basically, we don't have any existing reports of missing women, so we're not worried about it. And nothing was done until a woman literally broke out. And I'm hoping that there's being some action taken against the police department at some point, if not now.
A warning to our listeners and viewers. We begin today's show with a story that includes graphic details of sexual violence. On October 7th, a 22-year-old black woman in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, escaped from a white man who she says held her captive in his basement for nearly a month, whipping, torturing, and raping her repeatedly. The woman fled and knocked on a neighbor's door for help after the man left the house to take his son to school.
About 7:30 a.m., I faintly heard a young female saying, "Help me."
Lisa Johnson was the first person to encounter the woman and to help rescue her. She told the Excelsior Citizen the woman was nearly naked as she pleaded for help.
It was actually like an S&M dress. It was plastic, black plastic, very short. It wasn't shorts, it was a dress. That's all she had on, and the duct tape around her neck and the collar.
Oh my
God! It was restricted. It was a metal collar. It looked like a shot collar, a homemade one at that. I seen her wrists were pretty messed up and her ankles. Asked what she needed. It was obvious. I didn't really have to ask at that point. I just started looking. First thing I did was tell her I was calling the police. That kind of agitated her. She told her that if I called the police that he would kill both of us if he found out. She said he already killed her two friends that she was with.
God.
The woman who escaped said other black women were killed by her abductor. She's not spoken publicly. She's not been named, but she helped break open a story.
I really hope she doesn't get named. She deserves all the privacy in the world that she wants. I really don't think exposing her name is going to help her return to any sort of normalcy anytime soon. It's disgusting that this even happened, since there was evidence that this was happening in the community.
That the Kansas City police had vehemently denied, as community members raised alarm that black women and girls were being disappeared in September, possibly by a serial killer. Police responded by saying the reports were, quote, completely unfounded. Some of the concerns were raised in a now viral video by Bishop Tony Caldwell of Eternal Life Church by the independent publication, the Kansas City Defender.
I am a little upset right now. The reason I'm upset is because we got 4 young ladies that have been murdered within the last week here off of 85th and Prospect. We got a serial killer again, and ain't nobody saying nothing. The media is not covering it. We got 3 young ladies that are missing. Ain't nobody saying a word. What is the problem? Why can't we get some cooperation? Where's our community leaders? Where's our activists? Where's our public officials? Where's our police department? Where is those folks at? In President Gardens. Come on now. We need to start knocking doors. We need to start making sure that this is brought to the light. We cannot continue.
Every time I watch this video, I just can't help but think about this is a citizen begging for public servants to help and to serve them. It's someone begging for the bare minimum, and fucking kills me.
Continue to let this happen.
After that video went viral in September, the Kansas City Police Department spokesperson insisted there was, quote, no basis to support this rumor, unquote. But police have since arrested 39-year-old Timothy Hazlitt of Excelsior Springs, Missouri, for kidnapping and torturing the woman who escaped. The Kansas City Defender has reported on his social media posts saying they show the sexual predator was, quote, a white supremacist who believed we are in a race.
Of course he was a white supremacist. Of course. That makes a disgusting amount of sense. Oh my fucking God. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. This is what I was saying earlier with like giving air to any of this shit makes it to where they feel louder and prouder and fucking more bold, and it has real world effects and real world consequences on the most vulnerable of our society. Oh my fucking God. Oh my God.
Missouri for kidnapping and torturing the woman who escaped. The Kansas City Defender has reported on his social media posts saying they show the sexual predator was, quote, a white supremacist who believed we are in a race war. For more, we're joined in Kansas City by two guests, Ryan Sorrell, founder of the Black-led independent newspaper, The Kansas City Defender, and Justice Gatson, executive director of the Real Justice Network, a Black woman-led organization based in Kansas City, Missouri. Welcome you both to Democracy Now! I mean, Ryan, your Black-led independent newspaper has been leading the charge on this as the police department adamantly denied there was any issue until this woman escaped with chains. Can you take us through this story? And not only her story, but she said to the woman who helped her that her friends were killed.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is one of the most horrific tragedies that I have ever come across in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I know that when we first reported this story, we received it from numerous community members who were making these reports and testimonies, is what we refer to them as. The police department refers to them as rumors, largely because they come from the Black community. But
absolutely, that's what I could not understand last time. When someone was saying there are 3 Black women missing from the community, they said, we don't have reports of anyone missing. Those are just unfounded rumors. How is that not considered then the initial report of 3 missing Black women? If you haven't heard it yet, but you are hearing it now, is this not that the reporting process? What is different? Do I have to go get a piece of paper? Give me the piece of paper. Or are you not going to give it to me because I'm coming to you with a rumor? And is it a rumor because it's a Black woman we're talking about? Or because it's coming from Black people? Like, this is what I was saying, where the only real reason I can understand how this happened is systemic racism within the Kansas City Police Department. I do not understand, unless they are some of the worst detectives ever, or this was the most organized serial killer ever, which both are clearly not true. They've solved murders in the past without issues, and people were pointing out the fact that people were missing and someone escaped from him. Clearly not the most organized killer we've ever seen. The only thing that makes sense is a specific sliding denial and not looking out specifically not looking out for the Black community in the city. It's, oh God, it's so transparently, disgustingly racist. And the fact that this guy was a white supremacist and able to get away with it for so long raises even more alarm bells. Honestly, because of the rates of white supremacy and alt-right conspiracy and alt-right conservatives within police departments, because of violent crime in terms of domestic abuse within police departments, the fact that this guy was a white supremacist and getting away with murder fucking literally raises some alarm bells. I can't help but wonder. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying it's enough to warrant an investigation, I would think, if we were talking about something else other than a white supremacist in a different organization other than police. I think they would look for a link.
Reported these reports and testimonies in mid to late September. And, rather than reaching out to us to understand and gather more information about where we got this information from, rather than reaching out to the community to understand where these concerns were coming from, the police department, 3 days after we reported this initially, came out and literally just said these are completely unfounded rumors, is what they called them. And as you mentioned, they said that there's no basis to support these claims. And so to me and to us and our community, the number one problem with how the police department handled this situation was that they called it completely unfounded without doing any type of investigation at all. And it seemed, much more like they were actually trying to discredit our community voices and to silence our community voices than
100%.
Look after what was actually happening in our community. And to us, that's a testament to the type of anti-blackness that is prevalent in our police department, which 100%. Is also currently under federal investigation for racism and discrimination. And so once these new revelations came out, I actually reached out to the police department to see if they would update their statement or if they still maintained their initial position that our reports were completely unfounded. And they said that they do still maintain, regardless of these new revelations that clearly show that they were wrong, they said they still maintain their position that what we reported, they said specifically, was completely unfounded. And so we think that this is a larger conversation even beyond.
How could it possibly have been unfounded if there were literally people going missing and literally people being murdered? In what way is it unfounded? You think they just made it up and happened to be right? That makes no fucking sense. Okay, then they're psychics. Employ the psychic to help you with the investigation, I guess. I don't fucking know what you want from them, but like that. It's disgusting. It literally makes me want to puke with what people think they can get away with or what they actually end up getting away with. It's... oh my god. And I don't know if they were already under investigation for racism within the department or if that's a result of this. Either way, I really hope that investigation continues and is open publicly.
This specific situation, we think that this speaks to the silencing, the violent silencing of Black women specifically.
Yes.
Of the Black community at large here in Kansas City. And this is actually something that has been happening since the inception of the Kansas City Police Department. And we know that this is not the first time that this has ever happened.
And Ryan, I wondered if you could elaborate on that, some of the department's legacy of inflicting violence on the Black community, and also at times even police officers themselves implicated.
Absolutely. I mean, our police department, as I mentioned, is under federal investigation at this very moment. The federal investigation was launched a little bit over a month ago. Even just this past year, there have been multiple cases where the police department has been indicted for corruption. For instance, a situation last year where the very first police officer in Kansas City Police Department history was finally indicted for the murder of an unarmed Black man. And in that case, this was the case of Cameron Lamb.
Yeah.
In that case, it was proven in the courtroom that
Is that the man who was in his driveway in his car?
The Kansas City Police Department planted evidence. They planted a gun and said that it was from Cameron Lamb. In another instance, a man named Malcolm Johnson was murdered in a gas station, and the police department in the official police reports said that Malcolm Johnson was armed and that he was engaged in a shootout with the police department. And it wasn't until weeks later when employees of that gas station leaked surveillance footage that showed that not only was Malcolm Johnson unarmed the entire time, but that he was actually being held down by 3 police officers, and one of the police officers accidentally shot another police officer and then murdered Malcolm. And so this pattern
Holy
of what's taking place in our city with the police department lets us know.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Let me guess, paid administrative leave.
That we have no expectation any longer that they have the capability to be able to provide safety for people in our communities. And so that's why people like you'll hear from Justice Gatson from the Real Justice Network, these Black women who are creating infrastructure and public safety infrastructure that we can create for ourselves in our community so that we don't have to rely on this police department that we know is very clearly and blatantly anti-Black. blatantly racist and is currently being investigated for these things. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Justice Gatson. I'd like to bring you into the conversation. Welcome to Democracy Now! And could you talk about the Excelsior Springs neighborhood where Timothy Haslett lived, and Prospect Avenue, the area where the 22-year-old Black woman who escaped his house was from?
Yeah, sure. So Excelsior Springs is like a suburb of Kansas City. So down on Prospect area, the 80s, that would be considered
More in the
city of Kansas City. And so you'll have to drive out of the city into Excelsior Springs.
Yeah, I think it's like 20 minutes.
And so it's a smaller community in Excelsior Springs, a quieter community, and quite frankly, I could see an easier space to get away with something like this. And so, yeah, that's the community, that's the landscape. This woman was snatched off of the streets in the city and driven to a suburb and forced to stay there for nearly a month. And be the subject of sexual violence and abuse.
Now, Justice, I mean, this isn't a police department. When asked about it by Ryan's newspaper, when Ryan himself asked the Black-led independent newspaper, the Kansas City Defender, about these accusations that women and girls were disappearing, it wasn't just we're investigating and they dragged their feet. This was them adamantly denying this.
Oh yeah, it was
even taking it back.
It was way worse than it's mask off. Like I'm saying, with all the shit post-Trump era, yay, like breaching or bringing up anti-Semitism. Obviously, I'm not saying yay bringing up anti-Semitism has anything to do with this, but all these things collectively together make it to where culture feels more okay with being openly, disgustingly, and hatefully racist like this. And this stuff was always happening. The stuff that what was his name? The stuff that was described first by Ryan Sorrell has always been happening. Accidentally shooting a black person and then passing it off as, a good shot. That sort of thing has always been happening. Because cops protect cops, and that's part of the problem, right? That's part of what we're talking about when we say ACAB and defund the police. We need to hold them more accountable for when they actually murder people. But things are so bad now that it's to the point where people can literally say we have people going missing, there are people being murdered, and they'll just say, you're an idiot, that's a rumor. And then when it turns out they were 100% right and it was not unfounded, they'll just say, okay, maybe there were some murders happening, but what you were talking about was still wrong and is somehow different than this situation.
I'm adamantly denying this and not even taking it back to this point, though they did indict this man who it's now believed
when they
white
had to.
This incredibly brave woman saving herself, escaping in chains when he was taking his kid to school. What do you know about perhaps what she referred to, other women who he killed?
That is something that we are unclear about. Like, we don't have that evidence. I believe her. Like, I trust survivors. So I believe her, but we don't know. Like, there have been no reports from the police about any additional women being found. We just don't know yet about that part.
Yeah. I'm also on the same boat. Like, she has no reason to lie, no motive to lie. She doesn't even want to be identified. So, there's absolutely no reason to suspect why, between other people reporting that several women are missing, leading up to this situation, and her saying 2 of my friends were also murdered. All of that checks out. All of that makes much more sense together than the police narrative.
And how how the white press took the police at its word. I mean, they set the agenda by saying this is completely
Absolutely.
unfounded, as opposed to we're investigating.
Yeah, that is Kansas City. Every publication just follows the police. Whatever the police say, they just regurgitate it phrase for phrase, bit by bit. It is the exact same. You read it from the police, you have now read every news publication.
I mean, that's what they do. They take the police where they do no real investigation. I would say journalistic integrity is lacking and has been. It's something that I'm always calling the media out here about, because they do kind of just take the word of the cops, and that's what they run with. Our community is ignored. Oftentimes, we're not listened to. I'm not surprised that women and mages, Black mages in particular, are silenced. Mages means marginalized genders. And because that has happened, just the disrespect and the tone in which police officers conduct themselves in our community is atrocious. Just the very way they talk to us is unreal. And so that disrespect has been since forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard stories growing up.
I don't think you can point to a time where that wasn't a thing.
I got to experience my own situations with police. I mean, I told one of your producers the other day about being 15 years old and having the police pull a gun out on me and friends walking down that Prospect Avenue that this happened on. And so, you know, this is very, these speak to the traumas in our communities, and they touch us. They touch us in very real ways because we see it. We get stopped in the cars along with our men who get stopped. We see that trauma. We women are the ones who pick up all of the pieces of everything that's happening. And so this has been historic. It has been ongoing. And, you know, what I will speak to is that, I mean, honestly, there are people who come forward, and maybe the police didn't believe Bishop Caldwell, who quite honestly is not of good character. And I would consider him, you know, to be somebody to not trust. And so I'm thinking that's probably what happened, but there were other voices speaking out that should have been listened to.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know anything about Bishop, but I can understand taking things with a grain of salt when they come from a certain source, but that goes out the window immediately when several people from several different sources are reporting the same thing, you know? I think once it's been corroborated by several other people, it no longer becomes likely discreditable because of the source, because now you have multiple sources, so it at least warrants a look at, and I think that's irrefutable.
And let's be real, even before this, there was Candy Red, who was murdered in Kansas City, a Black transgender woman, 29 years old, and nobody has done a thing about it. There was another Black woman murdered in Kansas City, and we believe we know who killed her, and nobody has done anything about it. This is ongoing. We have cases back in the 90s where Black women have been murdered, and not to mention the Precious Doe case where the little girl who was abducted. There was a citizen, Alonzo Washington, who actually broke that case. The police could not figure that out. When we actually did have a serial killer along Prospect, the police didn't figure that out. It was the community who figured that out. And so we know for a long time that we've been keeping ourselves safe, and that
that's so
police,
sad.
We haven't been able to trust them. They haven't shown us that we can trust them. They won't even talk to us appropriately or listen to our concerns or complaints when we say that something is happening to us in our communities.
And Justice, I'm wondering if you could talk about, you mentioned the police. There was a recent arrest of a Kansas City detective who was charged with assaulting and abusing Black women for over a decade and faces 6 counts of deprivation of civil rights. Can you talk about that case?
Is that the guy that was doing it in jail cells?
I can, actually. A friend of mine, her name is Trisha Brisnell, who runs the Midwest Innocence Project. her client, Lamont McIntyre, while she was assisting him on his case, she met his mother, of course. And from there, she began to hear the stories about what was happening with Black women in the community. And it definitely bothered and angered her. We're actually having an event today about it. But that police officer sexually abused women in the community. They would do things like say they would plant drugs on them. They'll put a case on them.
Oh, I remember reading about this
something
piece of
that I
shit.
have grown up hearing. This is something that I've been exposed to. So I know that it has happened and it does happen. And so this has been brought to the light, thankfully, that this has gone on. And so there's some advocacy around supporting the victims of this police officer, as well as holding him accountable.
This is Kansas City Detective Roger Golubsky.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to end with Ryan Sorrell.
Former Kansas City detective, I think.
These reports of the man who's been arrested in this particular case, and not clear how many women are his victims, women and girls. But this whole issue of him being a white supremacist, posting that Haslett was a white supremacist who believed we're in a race war. He posted the race war started a long time ago. Wake up, you dumb bee. In another post saying he believed Breonna Taylor should deserve to die.
Holy fucking shit.
Talk about this.
Why?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why
I
are
think
you,
that
why are you throwing that in his face and making him talk about it? I feel like that was kind of weird. I get that it's important to talk about, but I don't know. The way that was presented really seemed kind of callous.
all part of it. You know, this is a case of, you know, racial terrorism, of, you know, sex crimes against Black women specifically. And so I think that the fact that he is a white supremacist is not surprising in the least. We do know, as you mentioned,
Disgustingly
that he
not.
said we're in a race war. He said that Black people are lesser human beings. He said when you start acting like humans, then he'll start treating us like humans. And so I think that, you know, it's very
This is
unsurprising.
literally fucking 1800s rhetoric. How? Oh. The Midwest is great because it's affordable, but it also is pretty goddamn draining with how uneducated it is.
To us that this man, Timothy Haslett Jr., is a white supremacist. And so I think, once again, just to go back to what Justice said, this conversation, I think, is much larger than this specific situation, this absolutely horrific situation. And I think that it's very unfortunate, and this is what I have been telling a lot of people, that it's truly unfortunate that it required this such a horrific tragedy to take place in order and for us to have to expose how the police department operates, how the police operate. And I do want to reiterate as well that even now, after it was clear that the white media outlets helped silence the Black community in this
no
case,
one said sorry.
Still, even as recently as yesterday evening and today, the white news outlets in our city continue to print exactly and parrot exactly what the police are saying. And
this is why I cover this story and cover shit like this in my area, but also other areas, because if regular news in the area won't, then someone has to. Someone has to get this shit out there. Someone has to help. And every voice that shines some light on it, every voice that reports on it is just another to the pile, another in the algorithm. And that's the whole goal, because the more stuff like this is shown in the light, the less the police departments and other industries and businesses and organizations can get away with it, and the more likely they are to be held accountable. And that is ultimately the goal, to hold wrong parties accountable and get to a place where everyone is more equally protected, equally served, and has equal opportunity. That is the goal.
really, it looks like already they have not learned anything at all from this situation. They continue to believe the police over the community and to continue to silence the community. And so I think, once again, that's standard journalistic practices in many cases. For
Nowadays, yeah, it's lazy.
For a lot of these white-owned
It's literally just lazy. Let me make a phone call real quick, get the information for our story, type it up real quick, and we're done. Next story real quick. Let's go.
And so we want to continue to uplift the conversation around what the work that Women Like Justice are doing for Black women, and to continue to uplift the conversation around how media outlets are complicit in how these crimes and these horrific acts of violence were allowed to continue to take place even after they were reported. We want to continue those conversations as well. But thank you all so much again.
Arguably, lives could have been saved. I mean, we'll never know. We'll never know, because we don't know what would have happened if the police would have acted, because they didn't. But arguably, lives could have been saved. Thanks for watching, guys. Follow me on Twitch to join us live, like and subscribe, and I will catch you later.